PFL 2021 event number 2. Rory MacDonald versus Curtis Millender in the main event. We have a pretty good card throughout. Make sure you guys smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let's start it off with the first fight of the night. Light heavyweight division battle. You may recognize Dan Spahn. He was a former UFC fighter, had one fight there, but was on The Ultimate Fighter and actually was a semifinalist on the show. He did lose to Matt Van Buren in that semifinal round. It's actually the same season Corey Anderson won. Dan Spahn, Martin Hamlet Nielsen. One thing I will tell you, Hamlet Nielsen does have a recent loss, and that was against Modestas Bauskas. He actually had good moments in that fight, and there's going to be some things we'll talk about. But let's first talk more about Dan Spahn. He actually is a PFL veteran at this point. He does have a really good skill set. He's a southpaw that has a very wide stance. Good striking, though. Lead hand is out a little bit far, but it works well for him. He has power in his hands. He has 8 wins by knockout on the resume and 5 submissions, so he is a finisher. And he's in a matchup here with kind of an opposing style, more of a grappler. Hamlet's a very good Greco-Roman wrestler. When he gets those double underhooks, he is going to get you to the ground. Lots of work up against the cage. Prefers the clinch work and wrestling, but I have to give credit. He's not a bad striker by any means. I do think fighting against Spahn, he's going to look to get inside, look to get the fight to the ground. Seeing how he performed against Modestas Bauskas, even in a loss, his wrestling was effective. I actually have a feeling here that the dog, Martin Hamlet Nielsen, is going to put a very wrestling-heavy game on Dan Spahn. I wouldn't say bet the house on Martin, but I'm going to be picking the dog here. I think he gets a unanimous decision win over Dan Spahn, but I will acknowledge Spahn does have power in his hands, and if he's able to stop a couple takedowns, could definitely put Martin Hamlet Nielsen to sleep. It's a light heavyweight fight, but I still see Hamlet pulling it off by a unanimous decision. That is the first fight, and he's a plus 100 dog. Let's check out if there's any other lines. Might be something better available. Apologize for that loading screen there. Thought it was already loaded in. So Dan Spahn has actually become the dog on some sites. A lot of people are seeing value in Hamlet. He opened as the favorite. I like Hamlet to win this fight, but Spahn as an underdog does have some value. There could be a bet placed, and I don't know. I like Nielsen definitely to win, but I do have to acknowledge now the odds shifting. If you are going to place a bet, obviously there's less value with Nielsen as the favorite in this fight versus, him as the dog. There's a good amount of value there. Still, riding Nielsen, I think he wins the fight, and I do think he's a safe bet. Next fight of the night, Sabito Sai versus Nikolai Alekshin. This is actually a very interesting matchup between these two. Sabito Sai has had some interesting performances in the PFL. Pulled off a very big, quick 17-second upset over David Makad. And then he also, in his last fight, draw with the eventual winner of that season, Ray Cooper III. He's a good striker. And he's a very tall welterweight, 6'3" to 5'10", 80-inch reach to 73.5. From striking range, Sabito Sai is going to be a serious problem for Alekshin. But I will give credit. Alekshin has very good hands. He moves well. Has that combat sambo background that I do believe he can definitely fall back on here. I feel like we're going to see Nikolai Alekshin look to get this fight to the ground. Sabito Sai, 5 losses. And if you look at the recent defeats, Magomedov beat him, and then Gleiko Franca TKO'd him. Get this guy to the ground. On the feet, he is definitely a problem. I do believe Nikolai Alekshin definitely can pull this off. I could see, a fluke knockout for Sabito Sai. He's pulled off wins before, but I don't think so here against the very experienced Russian as well. 26-5 at 30 years of age. I'm riding Nikolai Alekshin. I think he's a strong lock pick, minus 300. We'll check out what the odds are sitting at. Let's see if they've changed at all, because I do believe those are more the opening odds. Minus 295, minus 330. So the odds are pretty much the same. I like a pick on Alekshin. I think he's a pretty strong confidence pick here, unless something fluky, but I don't believe that's going to happen in this fight. I think we're going to see Alekshin do good work out there and dominate Sabito. Next fight on the card, another very interesting matchup. This one here in the light heavyweight division. Familiar names. If you remember, Nick Roherick took a short notice fight against Jared Cannonier failed the USADA test after and was released from the UFC. Cesar Muntanzi Ferreira, former welterweight, moved up to middleweight. He's now fighting in the light heavyweight division against a guy with the height advantage. Granted, Muntanchi has a freakish reach. He's got the 78-inch reach. He's got those long arms, which from outside range, that could definitely be a factor. I will give credit to Nick Roherick. He's a durable guy, even though, I mean, he did lose to Jared Cannonier. That's his only defeat. He scraps and he does come to fight. My worry, though, is obviously Cesar Ferreira being a southpaw. Could be a tricky matchup for Nick Roherick, also throwing the looping shots as he does and having very good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But here's something that really is swaying me towards the dog. He's definitely a striker with good skills, but he has a wrestling background as well. And he has the overhand punches that he throws awkwardly. Cesar Ferreira could be hit. He's there to get hit at times on the feet. He is a Vitor Belfort protege, but definitely doesn't have that same speed that Vitor had. I'm feeling a dog or pass bet here. I'm really feeling like Nick Roherick is a dog that could come through for us. 9-1 as a pro, hasn't had the most high-level competition, but he's 33. I think right now he knows this is his moment. This is a huge opportunity on the biggest stage. Cesar Ferreira, 36. I'm not saying he's an old 36, but he is on a 2-fight losing streak. Granted, decision losses. He's a guy that mostly gets decision defeats. He did get knocked out by Masvidal, and I believe there's another knockout loss on the resume. It's not an easy fight for either. I think this is more competitive than even the odds will have it because the natural light heavyweight. Cesar Ferreira moving up to light heavyweight, that's something to note. That's not his natural weight class. He's been down at welterweight and now he's at light heavy. Will he be stronger or will he be slower? Will the power of the heavyweights get to him more? I'm going to ride Nick Roherick to win this fight. He's a dog that I like. I think he can pull it off. He has heart. He has skills. I am going to pick him. Thinking decision or knockout here, I could see him catching Cesar Ferreira with an overhand, or I could also see him working towards a competitive decision. I don't believe Cesar Ferreira will be able to easily get this guy to the ground if the striking's not going his way, and that just also boosts my confidence in Nick Roherick. And he's 6'3", he's the naturally thicker and bigger guy. You think he's going to be stronger in the clinch as well. I'm riding Nick Roherick to win at the plus 155 dog. We'll double check if those are the most accurate, but he's a dog for sure here. Plus 140, look at that. The odds are coming closer. Plus 160. I mean, there's people that see the value in him, I do believe. I'm going to ride Nick Roherick to win, and I think he's a live underdog. Let's get to the next fight. This one's another interesting matchup. Vinny Magalesh, Jordan Young. Jordan Young was doing really good in Bellator. He looked like Bellator's next big thing. Like, he really looked on his way. And then he ran into a guy named Julius Angelikas and got completely dominated. That guy is just a freak of freaks and one of the top Bellator light heavyweights, and that's a guy to keep an eye on. Totally off topic and outside of the PFL with somebody in Bellator to watch. But Jordan Young is somebody to watch here right now in PFL. Vinny Magalesh is a veteran of the game. He's been around for a very long time. His last fight, lost in PFL. He has a good amount of fights here. At this point, he's been in the game for a while. I believe, yeah, that was a finals matchup against Sean O'Connell that he lost. But he's been through the ringer at PFL. He knows how the tournament thing works, and he's taken on a young kid with a lot of upside. 26 years of age versus 36 youth advantage. Also an inch taller with an 1.5-inch reach advantage is Jordan Young. Jordan Young is a submission specialist, as is Vinny Magalesh. Guys are both excellent on the ground. Magalesh, 17 career victories by submission. You look at Young, 9 victories by submission, just 11 fights. Grappling skill of both these guys is very high level. I will mention Magalesh recently suffered an injury at Submission Underground. His leg was crushed. He's coming back from that. In his last fight, he got knocked out. I don't like the odds of him coming back from an injury, being 36 years of age, coming off a knockout loss, and a year and 5 months ago, and he lost to Rashid Yupov, who's good, but Jordan Young, another good fighter, another fighter to watch. I'll be honest with you, I like the way he moves. I like the way he mixes it up with the hands. I think he can knock out a 36-year-old Vinny Magalesh or beat him by a competitive decision. On the ground, I think that Young needs to be very respectful, but I think his defense in this matchup, and I do think he'll plan on striking with Magalesh. I think Magalesh does have raw power, most definitely, but he's not the fastest. Speed advantage for Jordan Young. Jordan Young is going to get the win of this fight by knockout or decision here. I really could see the knockout, especially with Magalesh being knocked out in his most recent fight and coming off the injury. I'm going to go with the youth, Jordan Young, 11-1, somebody to keep an eye on, and he beats Vinny Magalesh here. The odds are pretty close for that fight. minus 110, minus 115. So, I mean, it's pick'ems. Let me check if those are the best you can get. Magalesh is broken into a stronger favorite. Minus 130, plus 100. I don't think a lot of people know about Jordan Young. He has the skills to win this fight, and I'm picking him to pull this off, and he is the dog. We got a good amount of dogs on this card. You have to respect the dogs in PFL. And I think there's some really live ones here. Antonio Carlos Jr., Tom Lawler. This is another interesting matchup on this card. This is a very widespread odds as well. Antonio Carlos Jr., Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu master, 6'2" to 6 feet, 79-inch reach to 74. He has all the physical advantages over Tom Lawler. I mean, the activity rate of Lawler has been minimal. 2 years and almost 6 months ago, he lost to Deron Winn, and he got destroyed on the ground in that fight. Before that, he lost to Corey Anderson in the UFC 5 years ago. These have been years. Like, that's before Corey Anderson was a contender. John Vellante, he did beat, and Michael Kupiner 8 years ago. I mean, this guy, Tom Lawler, he was good in his prime. He was fun to watch. Antonio Carlos Jr. is on a bit of a slump. You look at the 3 straight defeats. But you got to give him credit. He's going the distance. He's not getting finished. I mean, Tom Lawler, pretty resilient as well. He's not been finished in the 2 losses. Granted, I feel like the competition level, besides the Corey Anderson fight, but for Deron Winn, compared to fighting against Brad Tavares, I mean, I guess the stylistic matchup gives Tom Lawler problems, but I think Brad's a higher level fighter in the middleweight division. Antonio Carlos Jr. on the ground is very good with his jiu-jitsu, championship level. He's an Ultimate Fighter winner. I'll be honest, I like Shoeface in this fight. I feel like he's going to get the submission of Tom Lawler. I think he can do it maybe the first or second round. He's got 9 wins by submission out of his 10, and I think Tom Lawler is the next victim here. I'm picking Carlos Jr. He pulls it off in the light heavyweight division over the older and long layoff and breaks between Tom Lawler. So I got to ride Antonio Carlos Jr. As far as the odds for this fight, let's check them out. Antonio Carlos Jr. minus 335, minus 400. I mean, it's widespread. He's definitely a parlay pickup. Definitely could throw something straight on. And I like the submission prop. If that's actually released, let's check out what that's worth right now. See if the submission prop is here. It might not be. Okay, Junior inside the distance, minus 125. They don't have that prop yet, but if you tune into the weigh-in recap, you would check that out. I'll be doing the weigh-in recap and talk about all those bets. It should be dropping tomorrow. And that is it for the undercard, and now we're at the main card. So if you haven't yet, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Really helps us out. And the goal for this video, looking for at least 50 likes here. Honestly, I'd hope to exceed that and get even more. I appreciate everybody tuning in, supporting the channel. Let's talk about this first fight on the main card because it's definitely a fun one. And both guys have very good skill sets, but just at very different points of their career. Look at Kamozee. The losses had piled up in the UFC. Beat Tony Lopez. I mean, Lopez is a guy that's had a ton of fights and is an OG vet, but he was never a UFC fighter. And he's now Sortie being, I believe, the champion last year in PFL. Yeah, he beat Jordan Johnson. He's looked excellent since his loss on Dana White's Contender Series, beating everybody they put in his way, all by finish. Chris Camozzi, he's not an easy guy to put away. He's gone the distance plenty of times, but you can potentially get him in a submission. Hasn't had the best resume even outside the UFC. Lost one and then won one. His last fight was the Lopez fight, as I mentioned. Emiliano Sordi, also a southpaw. That's going to pose issues for Kamozee on the feet because, or rather, take that back. Kamozee, the southpaw, I feel like Sordi could actually pose more issues for Kamozee because he's a bit faster side to side and he does have a decent straight right hand down the line. You look at Kamozee, he has 8 submissions with 7 knockouts. You look at Sordi, brings in 14 knockouts and 7 submissions. It's not all about the stats, but the power of Emiliano Sordi is definitely legitimate here, and I really think the ground game is skilled as well. I see Sortie getting this done inside the distance here. I could see a knockout. I could see a submission. I'm definitely thinking he hurts Kamozee on the feet and potentially puts him down and then either gets a submission or gets the TKO. But I do think Emiliano Sordi is a lock pick in this fight, and I do think he's going to cause a lot of issues for Chris Camozzi here, making his debut in the PFL. It's not an easy fight to start off with, and they're not doing him any favors. I don't think he gets it done. Sortie puts on a dominant display. You look at the odds. Emiliano Sordi, minus 345, plus 285. The odds will vary around that depending on where play, what books you use. Emiliano Sordi's the pick. He gets it done in dominant fashion here. Such a dominant pick. That right there is, I believe, a true lock. Joao Zeferino versus Gleison Tibau. Gleison Tibau is OG, man. He is a guy that's been around forever. Tons of UFC fights. Coming off a win over Will Brooks, controversial. I believe the ref stopped it when he didn't tap. It was a weird situation. Efrain Escudero, decision win in that fight, but who is Escudero at this point? I mean, he's an older guy. Tibau is very physically strong. I mean, look at the physique on the man. He looks like a bodybuilder. He's jacked, and I don't know how he's always been able to make that 155, but let's note, this is at 170, moving up a weight class. Joao Zeferino, taller by an inch, 74-inch reach. You can't count out Gleison Tibau. You cannot. I mean, you look at his resume, longtime UFC vet, 13 submission wins. He's also a tricky southpaw, which I feel like in the Zaferio fight, I don't know, with the reach advantage, I feel like Zaferio might be able to actually land some straights down the center. He has KO power in his hands, and I would say the physical strength is a very clear thing that he brings as an advantage against most guys he fights at 155. Thing is, he's fighting at 170 now, against a guy with a very good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background, has good striking skills in his own right, brings in really good takedowns and trips, and 16 wins by submission on the resume. I like this fight. I think it's a good matchup. I do think it could be competitive. I think you can't count Tibau out, but I think Zaferio pulls it off, and I think he does so. I could see a unanimous decision win for Zeferino, or I could see a submission win for him here. But I do think he edges out Gleison Tibau, but Gleison, not a guy to underestimate. He's a live underdog as always, and surprised the odds are as widespread as they are, because I don't think you can count out Tibau. As many UFC fights as he has had. I mean, he gave Khabib probably toughest test of his career. So got to give Tibau his proper respect, even though we are not picking him here. I think Zeferino is going to get it done. With Zeferino, the odds for this fight, minus 240 to plus 180. The odds are not as widespread as they were originally, because there's money that's gone down on Tibau because he is a very live underdog. But I still believe Joao Zeferino gets the win. And maybe a little bit later on before the fight, if you're able to get a bet in, the lines will come even closer, and you can maybe throw something down at Zeferino, the minus 100s range. Next fight on the card is our co-main event of the evening, Ray Cooper III and Jason Ponet. Ray Cooper III is actually the champion of the most recent PFL season. That was 2019. A pretty good boxer. Does have a good wrestling base as well. 6 wins by submission. 14 knockouts. The power in the hands could be a factor here, but I will tell you, Jason Ponet is a very athletic striker. He brings 6 knockout wins to the game himself. But something that I think Ray Cooper will expose is the weakness of the submission defense. 10 submission losses here out of the 12, excuse me, for Jason Ponet. I believe Ray Cooper is going to put it on him with the grappling. Grappling heavy attack. I think submission win in the first or second round for Ray Cooper. He's a massive favorite. This is, I believe, a level of skill difference here. We'll find out when that cage door closes, but nowhere near the high level experience Jason Ponet has in his, a lot of fights, 33 fights, even though Ray Cooper has less. I mean, he's been fighting very skilled guys over in the PFL. Looking at the odds, more accurate look, minus 650 to plus 475. As of right now, Ray Cooper is becoming more of a parlay piece or a prop. Let's see what props they have out for him. Let's see. Ponnett. All right, they have his last name as 3. That's why we're missing it. All right, 3. A Ray Cooper III wins by submission, plus 325. There's value in that prop right there. Plus 325 for submission. Very valuable. If you can get your hands on that, maybe throw a little something down on it, because I really think submission win. You look at the background of Jason Ponet. He's a guy that gets submitted, and I believe gets submitted here by Ray Cooper III. Next fight is the main event of the evening. Arrived at it. Curtis Millender steps in, short notice replacement, gets the biggest opportunity of his career. You look at where these guys were, because they're both just recently fighting in Bellator. Both are veterans of Bellator that have decided to sign with the PFL. Curtis Millender, recent loss to Magalesh. Rory MacDonald was the champion in Bellator, and he just lost to Douglas Lima. So if you think about it, Curtis Millender would never get this fight in Bellator. That would be a very long road, because Rory MacDonald was a top contender there. Curtis Millender, I don't even know if he was around for when the rankings were released. I don't even think he was ranked or really near the top. He lost to Magalesh. But he gets this chance, and this is a serious opportunity for him. You can't really count Curtis completely out. He's never been knocked out. He does have 3 losses by submission. That tends to be where he loses fights, is on the ground. That's just the honest truth. He's a pretty good kickboxer. He's definitely an athletic fighter, and he likes to be inside of that boxing range, and he definitely can take a punch and can land some punches as well. Rory MacDonald, though, is extremely well-rounded. You look at his career, I mean, he's relaxed, he's patient, he's a top welterweight for so long at this point. He's a former Bellator champ. And I mean, he's not a finisher, really. He has 12 decisions out of the 21. Brings in 6 wins by knockout. He has a decent game. And I don't think you can count Rory, or rather, count Curtis completely out against Rory. But I will say the stylistic matchup, a patient guy versus Curtis Millender, I do think Curtis will have opportunities. Still, I'm not telling you the dog is going to pull this out. I think Rory MacDonald could definitely mix in the grappling, especially clinch takedowns and trips. Rory MacDonald should work his way towards a unanimous decision over Curtis Millender, but I do feel very excited for Curtis to get this big opportunity. He's the taller guy by 2 inches and has the 2-inch reach advantage. So if there's a possibility of an upset, could happen. Still, I think Rory's a pretty much lock pick here. He had a competitive fight against Douglas Lima. He did lose, beat Neiman Gracie before that, and a draw with John Fitch, lost to Gegard. I mean, hasn't had the best, as of late run, I guess, losing 2 of them, having a draw, but fighting very high-level guys, a very different matchup than Curtis Millender. I think Rory MacDonald gets the win here. He pulls off this fight by a unanimous decision. He wins in the main event. The PFL card is looking pretty good, and I'm very excited for it. And I think that we're in store for a very action-packed night. Let's check out more of the betting portion of this video. We'll talk about some potential parlays you could play, and maybe even some crazy 5 or 7 fight parlays. We'll see what we get to. We're going to come up with it as we go. So I really like Rory and I like Ray. If you're looking for guys, I feel strong confidence in Emiliano Sordi, minus 127. Is it scary to see 3 fights in a row having it down on? For sure. But I think these are 3 fighters in a row that really could pull it off and definitely should pull it off here. A safe 3-fight parlay, but it still brings you in the minus. So you got to put down 127 to make that 100. Who's somebody that maybe could spice it up, maybe could bring the odds a bit better for us? I feel like if you're going to add somebody and you want to take a higher risk, you throw Jordan Young on there and now you're at a plus 257. But I'm assuming if you're looking for more of these strong confidence parlays, you're going to want Carlos Jr. That brings you to plus 132. I think this is a near guarantee for success parlay. And for 4 fights, it's always scary. I mean, it's 4-fight parlays, but it's still plus 132. Not bad. If we take off the biggest favorite, Ray Cooper, we're at plus 101. So if you want to save yourself, give yourself less anxiety, Rory, Emiliano Sordi, Antonio Carlos Jr., plus 101. Those are some safer parlays, but I think it's time that we talk about some more excitement. If you're looking to take some bigger risk and get some bigger reward potentially, let's say you put Martin Hamlet on it as well as Jordan Young. We're now at plus 254. Widespread odds, or rather, like going in the right direction odds, and I think that we can get the spread that we want. I want that widespread away from 100 is really what I'm saying. I want to be looking at 3-4. Am I crazy enough to throw down Nick Roherick plus 749? Higher risk parlay, definitely. Likelihood of success, very possible here at plus 749. This is going to be not an absolute guarantee because, I mean, there's some dogs, there's some slight favorites on there. I still like the possibility of this coming up and succeeding for us at plus 749. Hamlet, Jordan Young, Nick Roherick. If you want to add more spice in your wild, I told you we're going to get a little bit crazy with some ideas. Rory MacDonald, plus 919. Who is somebody else I feel absolute confidence, especially with the odds as good as they are? We're looking at plus 1,214. Hamlet, Young, Roherick, MacDonald, Sortie. That's 5 fights. That's really serious amount that we could come through on. If you don't like Roherick, because I feel like some of you won't, you're looking at just plus 48. Still good numbers in the right direction, but we're going to be playing with Roherick here personally. Let's check out if we added in anyone else that I feel is worth. I feel like you don't necessarily want to take the risk with the Gleison Tibau, Joao Zeferino fight with the odds being this wide. If they close it up later in the week, tomorrow the weigh-ins will be on, then that's fair. Plus 1,214, we got Hamlet, Young, MacDonald, Sordi, Roherick. We added in, let's say, Antonio Carlos Jr. We're at 1607. Ray Cooper, 1869. This is just a sprinkle parlay if you just want to have fun. I mean, this right here is gambling. This is playing a lottery ticket, but it could come up for us, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7-fight parlay plus 1,869. That's going to be the craziest parlay of the day. I gave you guys a good list. The safer ones, the more risky ones. There's a good amount to play. Obviously, you guys probably will have some of your own. Hit me up in the comments if you have any ideas you want to throw at me or any questions as well. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I definitely enjoyed talking to you guys about this full card. Super excited for it. PFL is delivering consistent quality. There's a lot of good MMA leagues outside of just the UFC. So make sure you guys tune into PFL Thursday, April 29th. Thank you all so much for watching. Smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Also check out my social media, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And I will see you all in the next video.